The gray ashes fell like snow across Meralda's dark hair as her mother-in-law. Constance Whitmore emptied the cold fireplace over her head. "This is what you've brought to our family," the older woman hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "Nothing but ash and shame." Meralda stood motionless in the cramped cabin, her shoulders trembling not from the cold Colorado morning, but from the weight of 3 years of relentless cruelty. Her husband Jeremiah's family had never accepted her a half-Mexican woman who dared to marry into their pure bloodline. Since Jeremiah's death in the mine collapse 6 months ago, their hatred had turned vicious. "You killed our boy," wheezed Jeremiah's father, Obadiah, from his rocking chair. "Brought your cursed blood into this family, and now he's dead." The ashes clung to her tears as they traced silent paths down her cheeks. Her hands instinctively moved to her still flat belly, protecting the secret she hadn't yet shared, Jeremiah's child growing within her. She knew that revealing her pregnancy would only give them another target for their rage. "Pack your things," Constance commanded, shaking the empty ash bucket for emphasis. "You're no longer welcome in this house. Find somewhere else to birth. You're devil spawn." Before Meralda could respond, the cabin door exploded inward with a thunderous crack. The wooden frame splintered as a massive figure filled the doorway, his shadow swallowing the morning light. The Apache warrior stood well over 6 feet tall, his bronze chest bare except for intricate tattoos that seemed to dance across his muscles. His long black hair was adorned with eagle feathers, and his dark eyes burned with an intensity that made even Obadiah's complaints die in his throat. "Kana," he said, his deep voice rumbling like distant thunder as his gaze fixed on Meralda. The word meant little one in his native tongue, though she didn't understand it yet. The Whitmores cowered against the far wall, Constance dropping her ash bucket with a clatter. What do you want?" "Stut," the giant Apache's eyes never left Meralda's ash-covered form. He stepped forward, his moccasined feet silent on the wooden floor despite his imposing size. "You shame woman with sacred fire ash," he said in broken English, his accent thick but his meaning clear. "In my people's way, this is great insult to spirits." "Now see here," Obadiah attempted to bluster, struggling to rise from his chair. "This is our business, savage." "You've got no." The warrior's hand moved to the tomahawk at his belt, and Obadiah's words withered. "She comes with me," the Apache announced, extending his massive hand toward Meralda. "These weak spirits have no claim on strong woman." Meralda stared at the offered hand, her mind reeling. This stranger, this giant who had appeared like something from the stories her grandmother used to tell, was offering her escape from 3 years of torment. She could smell the sage and leather that clung to him, could see the fierce protection blazing in his dark eyes. "I don't even know your name," she whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. "Nahihosi," he replied, his tone gentling slightly. "T means he who walks with thunder." What are you called?" "Meralda," she managed, wiping ash from her face with the back of her hand. Nahihosi nodded approvingly. "Strong name?" "Like storm clouds before rain." Kept his hand extended, patient as a mountain. "Choose Meralda. Stay with ash throwers. Or come with thunder." Meralda's fingers trembled as she reached toward Nahihosi's outstretched hand. The moment their skin touched, she felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the fierce strength radiating from this mysterious warrior. His palm was calloused from years of wielding weapons and working with his hands, yet his touch was surprisingly gentle as he helped her to her feet. "Wait just a minute," Constance shrieked, finding her voice. "She's carrying our blood." "That baby belongs to the Whitmore family," Meralda gasped, her hand flying to her stomach. She hadn't meant to reveal her pregnancy, but Constance's words had spilled her secret like water from a broken pitcher. Nahihosi's dark eyes flicked to her belly, then back to her face. Something shifted in his expression, not disgust or rejection as she'd feared, but a deeper understanding. "Child of 2 worlds," he murmured in Apache, then switched to English. "Like my grandmother before me. That half-breed whore ain't taking a Whitmore baby nowhere." Obadiah struggled to his feet, reaching for the rifle mounted above the fireplace, before his gnarled fingers could close around the weapon. Nahihosi moved with fluid grace. In one smooth motion, he swept the rifle from its hooks and tossed it across the cabin, where it clattered harmlessly into the corner. "Old man should sit," he advised, his voice carrying the weight of barely controlled power, "before he falls." "Oh, she's got nowhere to go," Constance spat, though she pressed herself against the wall, putting distance between herself and the towering Apache. "No decent folk will take in a woman like her." "She goes to my people," Nahiosi replied simply. "Apache no worth of strong woman who survives winter wolves." His gaze swept over the ash-covered floor, the cold fireplace, the meager furnishings. That spoke of years of hardship. This place, ... it eats souls, makes spirits small and bitter. Esmeralda looked around the cabin that had been her prison for 3 years. Every corner held memories of cruel words. Every shadow had witnessed her humiliation. But now, standing beside this giant who seemed to fill the cramped space with warmth and possibility, she felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. "My things," she began. "What things?" Nehusi gestured toward her threadbare dress, her single pair of worn boots. "These people give you nothing worth keeping." He pulled a beautifully woven blanket from his shoulder and wrapped it around her, covering the ashes that still clung to her hair and clothes. The wool was soft as clouds and dyed in rich blues and reds that made her feel regal despite her disheveled state. "But I don't speak your language," Esmeralda protested weakly. A part of her was already imagining a life beyond these walls. "I don't know your customs," you learn, Nahiosi said with quiet confidence. "My grandmother was Mexican woman. Taken by warriors 50 winters ago, she became greatest medicine woman in all the territories. Her spirit lives in you. I see it in your eyes when thunder thoughts come." "Thunder thoughts?" Esmeralda asked, puzzled. "Angry thoughts that make sky darken," he explained, a hint of what might have been amusement flickering across his stern features. "When you think of revenge on ash throwers, you dream of freedom." Heat flushed through Esmeralda's cheeks. How had the stranger seen into her very soul? How had he recognized the fierce anger she'd kept buried beneath layers of forced submission? "Hey, you can't just take her." Constance made one last desperate attempt to assert control. "The law, white man's law, has no power in Apache territory," Nahiosi interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. "And woman chooses her own path." He looked down at Esmeralda, his expression softening slightly. "But choice must be yours, little storm cloud. I take no woman who does not wish to come." The cabin fell silent, except for the wind whistling through the gaps in the walls. Esmeralda felt the weight of 3 sets of eyes upon Hertha Whitmore's desperate, grasping stares and Nahiosi's patient, powerful gaze that seemed to offer her the world. Her hand moved protectively over her belly once more. Her child deserved better than this place of ashes and hatred. She deserved better. "I choose thunder," she whispered, then stronger. "I choose thunder." The Apache camp materialized from the landscape like a mirage becoming real. One moment, Esmeralda saw only endless high desert punctuated by red rock formations and scattered pinyon pines. The next, she was looking down into a hidden valley where dozens of traditional dwellings blended seamlessly with the natural contours of the land. Smoke rose from cooking fires, children played between the structures, and the sound of daily life drifted up to where she sat behind Nahiosi on his powerful paint horse. "Hokahi," he called out as they descended, and Esmeralda felt the words, meaning in her bones even before he translated, "It is a good day." The ride from the Whitmore cabin had taken most of the afternoon, during which Nahiosi had spoken little but shared much. He'd given her water from his doeskin pouch when she grew thirsty, had wrapped his blanket more securely around her when the mountain wind picked up, and had somehow communicated through gesture and careful English that she was safe, truly safe for perhaps the first time in years. Now, as curious faces turned toward them, Esmeralda felt her throat tighten with anxiety. These people would see her rounded belly soon enough, would know she carried another man's child. Would they accept her any more readily than the Whitmores had? As if sensing her thoughts, Nehusi's deep voice rumbled behind her. "My people judge person by spirit strength, not by color of skin or whose child grows within. You will see." An elderly Apache woman emerged from the largest dwelling, her silver hair braided with turquoise beads that caught the late afternoon sun. She walked with the measured dignity of someone accustomed to respect, her dark eyes sharp and assessing as they fixed on Meralda. "Grandmother," Nahiosi said, dismounting in one fluid motion before reaching up to help Meralda down. "I bring visitor who needs healing." The old woman who couldn't possibly be his actual grandmother, Meralda thought, given the warrior's apparent ages circled them slowly, taking in every detail of Meralda's appearance. She paused when she reached Meralda's face, studying the streaks of ash still visible in her hair, the red marks around her eyes from crying. "Ashki," the grandmother said finally, addressing Nahiosi. "This woman carries great pain and great life." Her weathered hand moved toward Meralda's belly, stopping just short of touching May. Meralda nodded, surprised by the request for permission, such a contrast to the Whitmores, who had treated her body as their property to abuse. The old woman's palm was warm against her stomach, and she closed her eyes as if listening to something only she could hear. "Strong child," she pronounced after a moment. "Warrior spirit. But mother's heart is wounded like bird with broken wing." She looked directly at Meralda then, her gaze piercing but not unkind. "I am Ionit," means eternal blossom. "You are Meralda Whitmore," she replied automatically, then flinched at her own words. Iona shook her head firmly. "That name belongs to ash throwers who wounded you. Here you choose your own name, as you choose your own path." She gestured toward the bustling camp around them. "What name calls to your spirit?" The question caught Meralda off guard. In her 24 years, no one had ever asked her what she wanted to be called. Her birth name had been chosen by her Mexican mother, her married name imposed by Jeremiah's family. The idea of naming herself felt both terrifying and intoxicating. I don't know," she admitted. Iona smiled, the expression transforming her stern features. "Names come when spirits are ready. For now, you are she who walks from Ash's Batali in our tongue." She turned to address the growing crowd of onlookers in rapid Apache, her tone carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making pronouncements. A young woman about Meralda's age stepped forward, her long hair adorned with small silver bells that chimed softly as she moved. "I am Desba," she said in accented but clear English. "Iona says, I help you find woman things, clean clothes, place to sleep, food for baby spirit growing strong." "Baby spirit," Meralda repeated, confused. "Apache believe child spirit chooses its mother before birth," Nahiosi explained. "Your baby picked strong woman who could survive ash throwers long enough to bring it to people who will honor its mixed blood as gift, not curse." Tears sprang to Meralda's eyes, not the bitter tears of shame she'd grown accustomed to, but something warmer, something that felt dangerously close to gratitude. For months, she'd viewed her pregnancy as another burden, another source of potential rejection. Here among people she'd been taught to fear, her unborn child was being welcomed as a blessing. "Come, Batali," Desba said gently, taking her arm. "Hot springs will wash ash from hair, and I have clean dress that will fit when belly grows larger. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, we teach you Apache ways." As she was led toward the women's area of the camp, Meralda caught sight of Nahiosi watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. There was protectiveness there, certainly, but something else as well, something that made her pulse quicken despite her exhaustion. The hot springs lay hidden in a grove of cottonwoods, their mineral-rich waters creating clouds of steam in the cool evening air. Meralda sank into the natural pool with a sigh that seemed to carry 3 years of accumulated tension. For the first time since Jeremiah's death, she felt truly warm. Desba sat on the rocky edge, working fragrant pine soap through Meralda's hair. With gentle fingers, "The ash comes away easily," she observed, "like bad spirits leaving to make room for good ones." Meralda asked, surprising herself with the question. She'd been thinking about the giant warrior since arriving at the camp, able to shake the memory of his fierce protectiveness. A knowing smile played across Desba's lips. "Since we were children, he saved me from mountain lion when I was 8. Summers Old carried me on his back for 2 days to bring me to Medicine Man." She rinsed Meralda's hair with warm spring water. That is his way. He sees someone in danger. He cannot rest until they are safe. Is that why he came for me? Just to help someone in trouble? Desba was quiet for a long moment, her hands stilling. In Meralda's hair, Nahiasi lost his first woman to winter's past. Died bringing their child into world. Baby died too. Since then, he walks alone, speaks little, shows his face only for hunting and war parties. Meralda's chest tightened, with unexpected grief for this man she barely knew. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. Stay was first time in many moons that... Fire came back to his eyes. Desba continued. When he brought you to camp, Ayana said she could see his spirit light burning bright again. She resumed her gentle ministrations. Apache spirits recognize each other, even across different bloods. Maybe your baby chose you as mother, but maybe spirits chose you for Nahiosi too. That had nothing to do with the hot springs flushed. Through Meralda's body, I'm carrying another man's child, she protested weakly. I'm still in mourning. Apache measure mourning, not in seasons, but in healing of heart, Desba said pragmatically. Some women grieve their whole lives. Others find new love before first snow melts. Spirits know which path serves life better. That night, wrapped in soft furs in Desba's dwelling, Meralda lay awake listening to the night sounds of the camp. Somewhere in the darkness, a flute played a haunting melody that seemed to speak directly to her soul.
Oh.
She wondered if Nayasi was also lying awake. Thinking of the strange day that had brought them together, her hand moved to her belly, where the baby stirred for the first time since leaving the Whitmore cabin. It was as if the child could sense the change in their surroundings, could feel the absence of the poisonous atmosphere that had surrounded them for so long. What do you think, little one? She whispered. Did your spirit really choose all of it? This. Dawn brought the sound of horses and men's voices raised in urgent conversation. Meralda emerged from the dwelling to find the camp in a state of controlled activity. Warriors were checking weapons and supplies while women gathered water and provisions. What's happening? She asked Desba, who was efficiently packing dried meat into parfleche containers. Scouts report cavalry patrol heading this way, Desba explained. Be looking for you. Whitmore family probably told them Apache stole their daughter-in-law. Terror shot through Meralda like lightning. She'd been so focused on her own escape that she hadn't considered the larger implications. If soldiers came looking for her, if they thought she'd been kidnapped, they'll attack the camp, she breathed, her hand flying to her throat. People will die because of me. No. The deep voice came from behind her, and she turned to find Nahiasi approaching, fully armed and painted for war. Red and black designs covered his chest and face, making him look like some ancient god of battle. They will not find us. We moved to winter camp in Sacred Mountains. I've done this dance with bluecoats many times, but I'm the reason you're a reason we remember that protecting innocent is worth any risk, he corrected, his painted face fierce, but his eyes gentle when they looked at her. Apache way is to face trouble head-on, not to abandon those who need shelter. Iana appeared at Meralda's side, pressing a leather pouch into her hands. Medicine herbs for morning sickness, she explained, and tea to make baby strong. Today you'll learn first rule of Apache survival. We take care of our own. As the camp began its swift, efficient exodus, Meralda found herself lifted once again, onto Naheos's horse. This time, however, she wasn't fleeing from something, but toward a future that remained uncertain, but glowed with possibilities she'd never dared to imagine. Ready, Batali? Naheosi asked, his war paint unable to disguise the warmth in his voice when he spoke her Apache name. She settled against his broad back, feeling the solid strength of him, breathing in the scent of sage and leather that was becoming familiar. Ready, she said, and meant it. The sacred mountains rose like ancient sentinels against the painted sky, their peaks touched with the first gold of dawn. After 3 days of hard riding through hidden canyons and forgotten deer trails, the Apache band had reached the winter camp, a secret valley so well concealed that Meralda understood why no cavalry patrol would ever find it. The settlement here was different from the desert camp, built for permanence rather than mobility. Sturdy log and adobe structures nestled against the mountain walls, taking advantage of natural windbreaks and springs. Gardens showed the remains of the recent Harvest and meat racks displayed strips of venison and elk jerky prepared for the long winter ahead. "This place is beautiful," Meralda breathed as Nyasi helped her down from his horse. The morning sickness that had plagued her for weeks seemed less severe in the clean mountain air. "My grandmother's grandmother first brought our people to this valley," he replied, his war paint now washed away to reveal the strong lines of his face. "Spanish conquistadors never found it. Mexican soldiers never found it. American cavalry never found it. Here, we are truly free." Over the past 3 days of travel, something had shifted between them. During the long hours on horseback, Nyasi had shared stories of his childhood, his training as a warrior, his dreams for his people's future. In return, Meralda had found herself speaking of things she'd never told anyone: her mother's death when she was 16. Her brief happiness with Jeremiah before his family's cruelty poisoned their marriage, her fears about raising a child. In a world that seemed determined to reject them both now, as they were assigned a dwelling near the center of the settlement, Meralda realized with a start that she was no longer thinking of this as temporary refuge but as something that might be home. "Batali," Ayana called from the doorway of the medicine lodge. "Come, time for proper ceremony to welcome you to the people." The ritual was unlike anything Meralda had experienced. Sitting in a circle with the other women, she listened as Ayana chanted in Apache, her voice weaving complex patterns that seemed to call upon spirits of protection and blessing.
Ow.
Sweet grass burned in a shell bowl, filling the lodge with fragrant smoke. And each woman in turn placed a hand on Meralda's belly and spoke words over her unborn child.
"They're giving her
Baby, an Apache name, Desba translated softly, calling on warrior spirits to guide its path and give it strength to bridge to worlds. When the ceremony concluded, Meralda felt fundamentally changed. The knot of shame and fear she'd carried for so long had begun to loosen, replaced by something that might eventually grow into self-worth. That evening, the camp celebrated with music and storytelling around a great fire. Meralda sat wrapped in a beautifully beaded shawl that the women had presented to her, watching Nyasi across the flames as he spoke with the other warriors. The firelight played across his features, highlighting the noble line of his profile and the intelligence in his dark eyes. "He watches you too," Desba murmured beside her, following her gaze. "When you are not looking, his eyes find you. Always." Heat bloomed in Meralda's cheeks. "It's too soon," she whispered. "I'm still married in the eyes of the law, still carrying." "Another man's Apache law says woman becomes free when husband's family casts her out with ashes," Desba interrupted gently. "Your white marriage died when they shamed you. Now you are free to choose new path." Later, as the fire died 2 glowing embers and people began retiring to their dwellings, Nyasi approached where Meralda sat, lost in thought. "Walk with me," he requested simply. They strolled to the edge of the camp, where the mountain stream chattered over smooth stones and the stars hung like scattered diamonds against the velvet sky. The silence between them was comfortable now, filled with shared understanding rather than awkwardness. "I have something to ask you," Nyasi said finally, his voice unusually hesitant. "But first, you must know I ask nothing you are not ready to give. Your healing comes first, always." Meralda's pulse quickened. "What is it?" Stopped walking and turned to face her fully. In the moonlight, his face was all sharp angles and gentle shadows, beautiful and fierce at the same time. "Among my people, when a warrior wishes to court a woman, he brings gifts to show his ability to provide. But you are not Apache-born, so I do not know if our ways seem strange to you." "Court me?" The words came out as barely a whisper. "If you are willing," he said carefully, "your baby needs a father who will love it as his own blood. You need a man who sees your strength, not your scars. And He paused, his usual confidence seeming to desert him. "I need someone who makes me remember what it feels like to hope." Tears gathered in Meralda's eyes, the good kind this time, warm and healing. "The baby isn't yours," she felt compelled to remind him. "Baby will be mine in all ways that matter," he replied without hesitation. "Love is not about blood. Love is about choosing to protect and cherish every day, even when days are hard." Looking up at this giant of a man who had appeared in her darkest moment like an answer to prayers she'd been afraid to pray, Meralda felt something crack open in her chest. Not breaking, looming. Yes, she whispered. Then stronger. Yes, Nehasi. I would be honored by your courtship. His smile was like sunrise after the longest night. Winter deepened in the sacred valley, blanketing the camp in pristine snow that muffled sound and made the world feel hushed and intimate. Meralda's belly had grown round and proud, and her Apache name had evolved from She Who Walks from Ashes to Itzel, meaning Rainbow Woman, because, as Ayana explained, she brought color and promise after the storm. Nihaeus's courtship was unlike anything she'd experienced with Jeremiah, where her late husband had been gentle, but ultimately weak, unable to stand against his family's cruelty. Nehasi was strength tempered by wisdom. He brought her small gifts, a carved comb made from antler, a pair of moccasins beaded with patterns. That told the story of her journey to the Apache, warm furs to keep her comfortable as winter progressed. More importantly, he brought her respect. He asked her opinions on matters both large and small, listened when she spoke, and never once made her feel that her thoughts were less valuable because she was a woman or because she carried another man's child. In spring, he said one evening, as they sat together outside their shared dwelling, for she had moved in with him after the courtship ceremony, another Apache tradition that felt natural rather than scandalous. When baby comes and you are strong again, I want to marry you properly. Apache ceremony, and maybe white ceremony too, if that is important to you. Meralda rested her hand on his arm, marveling at how right it felt to touch him freely. I never want to see another white ceremony, she said firmly. Apache ways honor the woman as much as the man, but that's all I need. He covered her hand with his thumb tracing gentle circles on her skin. You have become more Apache than some born to the people, he observed with pride. Desba says you speak our language better than her nephew who has lived here all his life. It was true. Meralda had thrown herself into learning Apache customs, language, and skills with the desperation of someone who had finally found where she belonged. She could now tan hides, prepare traditional foods, and even craft simple remedies under Ayana's guidance. The work gave her purpose and pride in a way that her years of servitude to the Whitmores never had. Because this is my real life, she replied simply. Everything before was just surviving until I could get here. Their peaceful existence was shattered one bitter February morning when a lone rider stumbled into camp. His horse lathered with foam and his face gray with exhaustion. Meralda recognized him as one of the young Apache men who worked as a scout near the white settlements, gathering information about cavalry movements and potential threats. Soldiers coming, he gasped as the warriors gathered around him. 3 days behind me, maybe less. Following my trail, despite the snow. How many? Nehasi demanded, his warrior instincts immediately taking over. Too many, maybe 50 bluecoats, maybe more. Led by angry white man with gray hair who speaks of stolen woman and justice. Meralda's blood turned to ice. She knew exactly who the gray-haired white man had to be Obadiah Whitmore, who had somehow convinced the cavalry to mount a winter expedition to retrieve his stolen daughter-in-law. Her presence here had finally brought the very danger she'd hoped to avoid. I have to go, she said, struggling to her feet despite her advanced pregnancy. If I surrender myself, they'll leave the camp alone. Die. Nehasi's voice carried the finality of an avalanche. You are my woman, carrying my child in my heart, if not my blood. Apache, do not surrender their own to appease enemies. But people will die. People die anyway when soldiers come, Ayana interrupted grimly. Better they die fighting for what is right than living with shame of abandoning innocent woman to wolves. The next hours passed in controlled chaos as the camp prepared for siege. Warriors checked weapons and ammunition while women and children were moved to the most defensible positions higher in the valley. Meralda found herself relegated to the medicine lodge despite her protests, tasked with helping Ayana prepare supplies for the wounded. This is my fault, she repeated, grinding willow bark into powder for pain relief. If I hadn't come here, if you hadn't come here, my grandson's spirit would have died completely. Ayana said sharply. Look at him now. See how he burns. With purpose again? You gave him reason to live fully. That is gift beyond measure. Through the lodge's opening, Meralda could indeed see Naasi directing the camp's defenses. His presence seemed to radiate confidence and determination, inspiring the other warriors as they prepared for what might be their final battle. As if feeling her gaze, he looked up and caught her eye across the camp. Even at this distance, she could read the promise in his expression. Whatever came, they would face it together. Night fell with no sign of the approaching soldiers, but no one slept. Meralda lay on her sleeping furs, one hand on her belly where the baby kicked restlessly, as if sensing the tension in the air. Tomorrow would bring either triumph or tragedy, and she found herself praying to both the Christian God of her childhood and the Apache spirits she'd learned to honor. Little one, she whispered to her unborn child, your mom is going to fight for the right to raise you free. If something happens to me, know that you are loved beyond measure. Outside, a wolf howled in the distance, and she chose to take it. As a good omen, dawn broke gray and ominous over the sacred valley as the sound of hoofbeats echoed off the canyon walls. Meralda peered through a gap in the medicine lodge's covering and saw them. A long line of blue-coated cavalry soldiers winding down the hidden trail that should have been impossible to find. At their head rode a figure she recognized with a sinking heart. Obadiah Whitmore, looking older and more bitter than ever, his face set in lines of righteous fury. Nahiosi was right. Ayana murmured beside her. Someone betrayed us. No white soldier could find this place without Apache guide. Truth hit Meralda like a physical blow. Somewhere among the people she'd learned to trust was someone who had sold out the entire camp for army gold or personal revenge. The cavalry formed up at the valley's narrow entrance, their rifles glinting in the weak morning sun. A white flag appeared, and one of the officers rode forward to parley. We know you have the Whitmore woman. His voice carried clearly across the camp. Return her unharmed, and we'll consider leaving peacefully. Nahiosi emerged from behind the defensive barriers, magnificent in his full war regalia. His voice boomed back with equal authority. No woman is held here against her will. All people in this camp choose to be here. That half-breed witch has poisoned your minds with her evil, Obadiah shouted, his voice cracking with age and rage. She killed my son with her cursed foreign blood, and now she's carrying another devil spawn to corrupt your savage souls. Something inside Meralda snapped at hearing her unborn child called devil spawn once again. Before Ayana could stop her, she pushed aside the lodge covering and walked out into the open. Her rounded belly proudly displayed, her chin raised in defiance. I am at soul of the Apache people, she called out, her voice carrying with strength she'd never known she possessed. I was not stolen. I was rescued from your cruelty. I choose to be here, and I choose to raise my child among people who will love them instead of torturing them. The sight of her seemed to enrage Obadiah beyond reason. You see, he shrieked to the soldiers. She's been completely savagized. They've turned her into one of their heathen wives.
Ow.
The cavalry officer looked uncomfortable with the old man's hysterics, but duty kept him in place. Ma'am, I need to hear from you directly. Are you being held captive? Do you wish to return to your lawful family? Meralda laughed, the sound echoing off the canyon walls like music. My lawful family threw ashes on my head and cast me out for being half Mexican. These Apache people welcomed me when I had nowhere else to go. This is my choice, freely made. Carrying a Whitmore baby? Obadiah protested. That child belongs with its proper family. This child belongs with its mother, Nahiosi said, moving to stand beside Meralda. His hand found hers, their fingers interlacing in a gesture of unity. That spoke louder than words. Its father who will raise it with honor. The standoff stretched taut as a bowstring. 50 soldiers faced twice as many Apache warriors, all knowing that any moment might bring a bloodbath that would stain the sacred valley red. Then Meralda felt at the first unmistakable contraction, low and strong across her belly. Perhaps sensing the danger, or simply deciding that now was its time, had chosen this moment to make its entrance into the world. Ayana, she gasped, doubling over as the pain seized her. The medicine woman was at her side instantly, supporting her weight. The baby comes, she announced to the assembled warriors. We need the lodge prepared now. What happened next would be talked about around Apache fires for generations to come. As word spread that the Rainbow Woman was giving birth, something shifted in the very air of the valley. Even some of the cavalrymen lowered their weapons, unwilling to attack a camp where new life was entering the world. For the next 6 hours, as Merelda labored to bring her child into the world, 2